today we're talking about metric measurement conversions. And the great thing about the metric system that we've been talking about in class is that the metric system is based upon the number 10, just like our decimal system. So length, capacity, mass, each have a base unit. So the base unit for length is meter, the base unit for capacity is liter, and the base unit for mass or weight is gram. And then each of those base units, prefixes can be added to them so that a decimeter is 1/10 the size of a meter, a centimeter is 1/100th the size of a meter, and a millimeter is 1/1000th the size of the meter. And same thing with the prefixes that make the unit larger, which is decaliter is 10 times the size of a liter, hectoliter is 10 times the size of a decameter, and a kiloliter is 10 times the size of a hectoliter, which makes it 1,000 times the size of a liter. So I like to remember these prefixes in order by remembering King Henry doesn't bother drinking chocolate milk, and each of those is an acronym for the particular prefix that it represents. And then here, bother stands for base because each of these are our base unit of measure for metric measures. All right, so then we have to remember that to go from a small unit of measure to a large unit of measure, for example, a small unit of measure like milliliters to a larger unit of measure like liters, then I am going to go from a small unit of measure, which I cross my arms over my chest, to a large unit of measure. Open your arms nice and wide, and that reminds us that we're going to divide because our arms look like that fraction bar division sign. If I go from a large unit of measure like meters and I want to go to a smaller unit of measure like centimeters, I can remember that by opening my arms wide like a big unit of measure meters and then crossing them like a small unit of measure like centimeters, and that means I'm going to multiply because then my arms look like a multiplication sign. So that's a good way to help you remember which unit you're changing it to and which operation you're going to use to change. So then let's try it. We've already done a couple of these together, so let's go ahead to number 3. Now, I like to keep in the corner of my paper whenever I'm working with a metric system, I like to use King Henry doesn't and bother is my base units, drinking chocolate milk. And that kind of helps me keep my prefixes in order so I know which direction I'm moving, how many times I'm multiplying by 10 or how many times I'm dividing by 10. So 3 9/10 hectoliters, and I want to change it to liters. So let's go to my chart. I can look at this simple chart, or I can scoot all the way up here to my original chart that has a little more detail to it. If I look at hectoliters, they're right here, and I want to move to liters. So it looks like I'm moving to the right. So when I move to the right, I'm going to multiply the number times 10 and multiply the number times 10 again. When I multiply times 10 twice, that means I'm multiplying by 100. So basically what that means is that every hectoliter is equal to 100 liters. So 1 hectoliter equals 100 liters. So then I'm going to multiply 3 9/10 times 100 to figure out how many liters are in a hectoliter. And again, I can also tell that on my chart, I'm moving from hectoliter to liter. I'm moving to the right, which means I'm going to multiply. Anytime I move to the right on my chart, I'm going to multiply. Anytime I move to the left on my chart, I'm going to divide. So, and also another way to remember it is my arms. Hectoliters are larger than liters. So I'm going to open my arms really big for hectoliter and then close my arms and cross them for liter because it's smaller, and that would be to multiply. So I'm going to multiply by 100. When I know that I multiply by powers of 10, we learned to multiply powers of 10 earlier in the year, and we talked about that powerful power of 10, and we wrote a lightning bolt over it. And so if I multiply by a power of 10 with 2 zeros, I can move my decimal 2 places to the right to multiply by that power of 10. Here I have a little egg holder. That means I'm going to put an egg in there. So 390 liters is equal to 3 9/10 hectoliters. If I try this one over here, I'm going from liters to milliliters. So if I look at my simple chart here, here's liters, here's milliliters. It looks like I'm multiplying times 10 times 10 times 10, which would be multiplying by 1,000. So I'm going to multiply by 1,000. 3 zeros means I'm going to move my decimal 3 places to the right. I see 2 egg holders, so I've got to add 2 eggs. That means 6,200 milliliters equals 6 2/10 liters. Number 5, I'm going to change centimeters to millimeters. So if I look at my chart, here's centimeters, here's millimeters. Looks like it's times 10. One prefix to the right is times 10. So that means there's 10 millimeters in every centimeter. So I'm going to multiply times 10. One place to the right is 35 millimeters. Lastly, if I want to compare two different measures, what I have to be careful of, just like when I'm comparing fractions, I want to make sure I have the same size pieces or the same size unit of measures. So I've got to change my hectograms to kilograms or my kilograms to hectograms so that they match. So if I go ahead and change my kilograms to hectograms, then if I look up here at this original chart, a kilogram is 10 times as big as a hectogram. So there are 10 hectograms in every kilogram. So I'm going to multiply by 10. I'm going from kilogram to hectogram. So that means I'm going to multiply because a kilogram is larger than a hectogram. One place to the right. So this is equal to 32 hectograms. So then I can tell that 32 hectograms is equal to 32 hectograms. Those two are equivalent. And lastly, 6 kilometers and 660 meters. So if I change the meters to kilometers, if I look at my chart from meters to, meters is in the middle here. Meters to kilometers means that I'm going divided by 10, divided by 10, divided by 10. So I'm dividing by 10 3 times. That's dividing by 1,000. When I divide by 1,000, I'm going to move my decimal 3 places to the left. And this is equal to 0 and 66 hundredths kilometers. And then I can tell that 6 kilometers is greater. So 6 kilometers is greater than 660 meters. And that is a quick version of your metric system and converting different metric measures.